It's unimaginable to think about what a general war amongst great powers would even look like with the kind of technology we possess today. Humankind is 70 plus years into an ongoing and unending experiment. Can we handle our weapons technology? The only way this experiment ever concludes is if we find out that we can't. There's a famous quote that may or may not have been said. You never know about these things, by the great physicist Albert Einstein. He's supposed to have said something to the effect that he doesn't know with what sort of weapons the third world will be fought with. But the one after that will be fought with sticks and stones. One of my favorite phrases, coined at a certain point during the Long Peace, which was attributed to Air Force General Curtis LeMay, but he swears he never said it, was bombing someone back to the Stone Age. Is something like that even possible? And what are the odds that we get to find out? I think what I find so interesting about both those quotes, the Einstein one and the LeMay one, is that they both invoke this idea of knocking humanity back on the civilization scale a few rungs below where we are now. As we all know, human history, as I described, is kind of like a stock market. You have your ups when civilization reaches new levels of sophistication and technological capabilities and all that, and then you have your downs.
Hey there. No, it's not my dog. I do a paint your pet class, and this is like the pre-sketches. I sort of making a little coloring book for the people who come in for the class, so they can just paint this version. It's a lot quicker for them. Plus, most of them don't really know how to paint, or are beginners.
Giant plagues that wiped out the population back in the old days.
Hi, Kayla.
For example, what both Einstein and LeMay were referring to, nuclear war between the great powers, what we used to call World War III. Once upon a time, when I was growing up, even seemed to be like a gun aimed at your head. You walked around with this all the time, sword of Damocles over your entire society, really the entire world. Because it didn't matter if you were a neutral country during the Cold War. All-out nuclear exchange happened between the United States and its allies and the Soviet Union and its allies. Switzerland wasn't escaping unscathed, right, just because they were neutral. It became the first time in human history where you had the potential for a single human being. We really don't know how these things run, but the potential for a single human being to have the power to destroy tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of lives with a decision window of minutes by the giving of an order. You think of all of the really scary people in human history from a power standpoint. Your Genghis Khans, your Alexander the Great, you name it, your Hitlers, it doesn't matter. None of them had that kind of power. If Genghis Khan decided he was going to destroy your civilization, you were in for 10, 20, 30 years of war, maybe, especially if you were China. If Richard Nixon in 1969 decides to nuke China, you destroy 100 million people in an afternoon. Nobody's ever had that kind of power before. It's a unique, new human experience, and you don't get any of those. Although the people that were there, the 400, 450 special human beings that witnessed the birth of the atomic/nuclear age, realized the minute they saw it that everything had changed. The successful testing of the atomic bomb was, of course, the famous Trinity bomb test from July 16, 1945. And not only was the weapon successful, which was not a given, but it was more powerful than physicists had expected. And many of them, if not all of them, could look into the future and see that this was a weapon that was only going to grow in power as time went on. As powerful as the test they had just witnessed was, this is scratching the surface of what this new era will provide in terms of weaponry. bomb went off. This way, in 1965, they did a program called The Decision to Drop the Bomb. Quote, we knew the world would not be the same. We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remember the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu was trying to persuade the prince, but he should do his duty. And to impress him, takes on multi-armed form and says, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. All the old religious texts always have so much power to the language, don't they? In this case, it matched what Oppenheimer and his fellow scientists created and saw and witnessed, and that day must have been a whole slew of mixed emotions for those people. The famous Manhattan Project was a giant endeavor to build a super weapon, and some of the greatest minds in physics and sciences related to that from all over the world were brought together. Massive amounts of resources and manpower and money devoted to the project, and all these people sitting on pins and needles during the test because nobody knew if this was going to work or not. There were a lot of reputations on the line, all sorts of giant amounts of pressure and tension, and so when the bomb went off, there was a huge sense of relief and triumph, but mixed emotions among some of the physicists. Not all of them, by the way. But people like Oppenheimer, for sure, the reason for mixed emotions was, if you had already seen how the last year of the Second World War, 1945, had gone, who would have thought anyone needed to create a super weapon that was much of an improvement on the technology as it was being unleashed that year in the war? In 1945, cities were being wiped off the map a couple of times a week. Cities. There's one thing the Second World War proved yet again, is it doesn't matter how many arms of limitation ideas you want to float. You're not in total war. How much you have these genteel ideas about how weapons will be used and when they will and won't be employed. When you are fighting with everything you have against the other great powers in what's called total war, there is nothing in the arsenal that you are not prepared to use. People sometimes point out poison gas wasn't used in any sort of major way in the Second World War, but the reason why is because it wasn't a war-winning tool. If it had been, when it used it, wasn't worth what would happen in return to you for something that amounted to essentially a minor irritant in terms of the war effort. Nuclear weapons would have been a different thing. I mean, imagine if Hitler and the Nazis had gotten home with a nuclear bomb first. That's the thought that motivated a number of those physicists involved in the Manhattan Project, denied Germany the chance to get nuclear weapons before the Allies. Some of them were less enthused once they realized, well, there's no way that they're going to beat us in this race. Because then all of a sudden, you work to create a super weapon, you put it in the hands of human beings. Therein lies both the problem and the challenge. And the physicists, when they thought to themselves about this, knew it. When they talk about how we're all going to survive a world where the weaponry is as powerful as the modern descendants of those weapons that were originally used in the Second World War, the physicists talk about us needing to grow as a species, or else is sort of what's implied. And I would suggest that in most of these quotes you can hear them looking on the bright side, or putting the best face on the idea of now that we have these super weapons, what does it mean for mankind? Oppenheimer himself said, quote, "It did not take atomic weapons to make man want peace, but the atomic bomb was the turn of the screw. The atomic bomb made the prospect of future war unendurable. It has led us up those last few steps to the mountain pass, and beyond there is a different country." End quote. In other words, we could never quite get that peace thing right till we had the right incentive. The fact that we'll all be blown to kingdom come is the right incentive. Hail peace. That's putting a good face on it. Oppenheimer wasn't going to be so positive. Arthur Holly Compton, also a physicist. It is hard to think of fissionable materials when fashioned into bombs as being a source of happiness. However, this may be. If with such destructive weapons men are to survive, they must grow rapidly in human greatness, and a level of human understanding is needed. The reward for using the atom's power toward man's welfare is great and sure. The punishment for its misuse would seem to be death, and the destruction of the civilization that has been growing for 1,000 years. These are the alternatives that atomic power, as the steel of Daedalus, presents to mankind. We are forced to grow into greater manhood. End quote. Is that a nice way of saying adapt or die when it comes to altering modes of human behavior that have been a part of the story since there's been a story? Of course, not all the physicists always looked at the bright side on this question. There's a famous quote by Albert Einstein that makes him sound like he's a bit of a pessimist when it comes to the question of society's ability to adapt or die. In this question, he's supposed to have said, quote, "The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything, save our modes of thinking, and thus we drift towards unparalleled catastrophe." The gun aimed at our heads, the sword of Damocles, something we were very aware of. When I was a kid, we did duck and cover drills for atomic bombs dropping, nuclear bombs, thermonuclear bombs by then. That gun is still pointed at our heads. We just don't notice it anymore because so many people have grown up in the shadow of that they're used to it. If somebody's pointing a gun at your head all the time, eventually do you forget about it? If you're born with a gun pointed towards your head, do you even notice it? In a way, I kind of see the ability of people to forget that that gun is aimed at them as an evolutionary success story. And why should these people be traumatized because of something that happened 70 or so years ago? They have their own lives, their own problems, their own world to deal with. We all have to carry the baggage of preceding generations on our backs all the time. What will we be dealing with? So in a sense, it's a healing mechanism, but is healing the same as forgetting? It seems to me one of the main things working against the idea of this long peace continuing indefinitely is we don't remember why it was so important. We never have another great power war to begin with. If the sword of Damocles has not fallen in a while, you forget how sharp it is and what a horrible mess it can leave. British philosopher Bertrand Russell once made it sound like the odds of human beings managing to avoid having to be reminded how sharp the sword of Damocles is when it comes to nuclear war seems unlikely to work. You may reasonably expect a man to walk a tightrope safely for 10 minutes. It would be unreasonable to do so without accident for 200 years. End quote. If you want to be reminded of what that sword of Damocles can do, there's only two real-world examples that you can go study that will tell you. There's a lot of scientists out there and calculations done and testing, but the only thing that really compares, if you want to see not a glimpse into the past of a singular human experience that only happened twice to a certain group of human individuals in a certain situation, but instead you want to see what a future nuclear attack would look like, you have to look at the only two that there have ever been. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima 6, 1945, and the one right afterwards, a few days later, in Nagasaki. These days, when the atomic bombings are discussed, it's often in the context of discussing the morality of dropping them. Was it right to use them at all? I find that the problem with these discussions, and I've talked about it in other programs, is this idea that the people involved at the time, the decision makers, had as much free range of options as people today assume they have, when they didn't. I mean, the idea that President Truman could have done something besides drop the bomb is a little bit out of step with the political realities he was dealing with at the time. Historian Gary Wills, who wrote a whole book on the power of the atomic bomb to change everything, had this to say about what would happen if Truman had decided not to use the bombs, which would use them in another way. The other person, by the way, mentioned in this quote is General Groves. General Groves was the military head of the Manhattan Project. This was the bomb power historian Gary Wills' next quote. If it became known that the United States had a knockout weapon it did not use, the families of any Americans killed after the development of the bomb would be furious. The public, the press, and Congress would turn on the president and his advisors. There would have been a cry to impeach President Truman and court-martial General Groves. The administration would be convicted of spending billions of dollars and draining massive amounts of brain power and manpower from other war projects, and all for nothing. End quote. In addition to that, and this is often overlooked, I think, by people who talk about the morality of dropping a bomb like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki weapons on civilians, and that's what the Japanese civilians were already putting up with on a daily basis. What the Germans had started in places like Rotterdam in 1940, the Japanese had done in China before the Second World War officially started, had been developed into the aerial weapons we saw from 1943 onward. And they were devastating without the nuclear bombs at all. In March 1945, months before the atomic bombs were dropped, Tokyo was hit with a firebombing raid that killed 100,000 people and vaporized 17 square miles of the capital. And by the time the atomic bombs were dropped, 50 to 60 square miles of Tokyo were gone, and it had been taken off the top priority targeted list. Some 16 plus other Japanese cities had had the same fate meted out to them. It was a logical extension, a natural progression, if you will, of total war. It's a dynamic that would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to stop. It's partly the reason why, when we discuss another total war today, it's so scary. Because the idea that human beings could control what's going on is an illusion. It has a momentum all its own. Now, there are some things that were different about the atomic bombings and that blow me away to this day. One is the instantaneous nature of it. It's hard enough, you would think, to get your mind around the changes that happen to your city. Massive land war bombing raid. I mean, if you have 500 or 1,000 heavy bombers flying over your city, practically wingtip to wingtip, dropping incendiary and high explosive bombs on your town, how hard is that to get your mind around? When you crawl out of the bomb shelter and see what used to be your city in ruins, how hard is that to get your mind around? But if instead of happening over a 24 to 36-hour time period, it happens in the blink of an eye, well, that's what the atomic bombs did. The best, relatively short description I've read of the effect of the two bombs was penned by author Susan Salford in her book about Nagasaki. She says that within a second of the bomb being dropped, the fireball was 750 feet in diameter, and the temperature in the fireball was 540,000 degrees Fahrenheit, higher than in the center of the sun, she writes. She says, quote, "The bomb's vertical blast pressure crushed much of the Urakami Valley. Horizontal blast winds tore through the region at 2.5 times the speed of a Category 5 hurricane, pulverizing buildings, trees, plants, animals, and thousands of men, women, and children. every direction. People were blown out of their shelters, houses, factories, schools, and